Christmas Eve. The fire crackled softly behind me, but I couldn't feel its warmth. My hands were shaking, but I kept my smile fixed in place, the one I'd perfected after years of being overlooked. I watched my brother Matthew slide a velvet box across the living room carpet toward Regina, our stepmother. Her eyes widened with theatrical delight as she gasped, "Oh my goodness, Matthew," opening it, to reveal a diamond necklace that caught the Christmas tree lights and scattered them across her collarbone like she belonged in a jewelry commercial. Everyone applauded. Cameras clicked. Glasses clinked. Then it was my turn. Matthew handed me a gift wrapped in faded snowman paper. The corners frayed as if it had been sitting in a closet for years. I peeled it open slowly, aware of the sudden hush that had fallen over the room. Inside was a cracked picture frame, the same one I'd given Mom before she passed. Only now the glass was shattered, and the photo inside was missing. "It's symbolic," he said, like that made it better. "You always liked old memories." I smiled. A tight, silent, practiced smile. I said thank you. I even hugged him. But inside, something final and irreversible snapped. "Susan, you're so easy to shop for," Regina chimed in, her diamond necklace catching the light as she tilted her head. "Sentimental value is so much more meaningful than material things, don't you think?" The room murmured in agreement. Aunt Paula patted my hand. Uncle Robert nodded sagely. Nobody seemed to notice or care that the glass was actually broken, or that Matthew had essentially given me garbage while Regina wore thousands of dollars around her neck. I excused myself to the kitchen, volunteering to make coffee for everyone. It was my role, after all. The helper, the invisible one, the daughter who had stayed. Lancaster, Pennsylvania had been my home for all 47 years of my life. The last 5 I'd spent alone in Mom's modest house on Elm Street, the one she'd left. Me in her will, at least in the original will. The will that Matthew and Regina had somehow managed to update after she became too sick to recognize her own name. As I arranged cookies on a platter, store-bought because Regina had dismissed my homemade ones as too rustic, I could hear them in the living room, laughing, celebrating, living the glossy Christmas card life that had no space for a middle-aged woman who worked at Peaceful Pines retirement home and wore practical shoes. "Need any help in there?" It was Matthew, suddenly appearing in the doorway. At 39, my younger brother still had the boyish charm that had gotten him out of trouble his entire life. Dark hair that curled at the temples, blue eyes like Mom's, and a smile that could convince anyone of anything, even me, for years. "I'm fine," I replied, measuring coffee with steady hands. "The frame," he started, leaning against the counter. "I didn't realize it was broken. Regina found it in the attic when we were clearing things out. Thought you might want it back." "It wasn't in the attic," I said quietly. "It was on Mom's nightstand until the day she died. I took it home with me afterward." A flicker of confusion crossed his face. "Are you sure?" Regina said, "I'm sure, Matthew." I turned on the coffee maker. It was the last Christmas gift I gave Mom. The photo was of us, you, me, and her, at Lake Harris. She kept it beside her bed for years. He cleared his throat. "Well, memory is funny sometimes. Anyway, Regina really loved her gift. Did you see her face? Cost me a fortune, but worth every penny." I nodded, focusing on the coffee dripping into the pot. "I'm sure it was. We're thinking of renovating our house, in the spring. Expanding the master bedroom, maybe adding a sunroom where that old reading nook used to be." The reading nook, where Mom and I had spent countless hours sharing books, whispering secrets, holding hands during her final months, where I'd read to her when her eyes got too tired to see the words herself. "That sounds nice," I managed. He patted my shoulder. "You should come by more often. Regina says you're always welcome, you know. She worries you're lonely in that little rental of yours." My little rental. The house I grew up in. The house Mom had explicitly left to me. "I'll try," I lied. I carried the coffee back to the living room on Mom's silver tray, the one Regina now called ours, and poured cups for everyone. I sat in the corner armchair, the one with the slight wobble that nobody else wanted, and watched as Regina modeled her necklace for the family, tilting her swan-like neck this way and that. "Susan," Aunt Paula said, leaning over, "have you thought about dating again? My neighbor's brother just got divorced. He's about your age, works in insurance." "I'm quite happy on my own," I replied, the same answer I'd given for years. But you're not getting any younger, she pressed, and it would be nice to have someone to take care of you. I had taken care of myself, and Mom, for years. But they didn't see that. They saw only what was missing in my life, never what was there. As the evening wore on, I felt myself fading into the wallpaper. A Christmas ghost. Present, but unseen. When it was time to leave, I hugged everyone, promised to call more often, and walked to my car alone. The drive home was quiet. Snow had started to fall, dusting the streets of Lancaster with white. I passed the town square with its giant Christmas tree, the coffee shop where Mom and I used to get hot chocolate, the library where I still volunteered on Sundays. At home, I hung my coat on the rack by the door and walked directly to my bedroom. From beneath my bed, I pulled out a carved wooden box, the one Dad had made before he passed when I was just 20. Inside were papers I'd discovered months ago but hadn't had the courage to face until now. I spread them across my bedspread. The original will, Mom's handwritten, letters, bank statements, photographs, evidence of a truth that had been buried. They think I'm a background character in their perfect holiday story, I whispered to the empty room, but they forgot I still have the original script. I carefully placed everything into a small gift box, wrapped it in silver paper, and tied it with a red ribbon. Then I set my alarm for 5 a.m. Tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow, the invisible woman would finally be seen. The alarm jolted me awake while darkness still claimed the world outside. 5 a.m., Christmas morning. I dressed quickly in warm layers, jeans, sweater, my heavy wool coat, and picked up the silver package from my nightstand. It felt impossibly light for something that carried so much weight. I drove through empty streets, Lancaster, still sleeping off Christmas Eve celebrations. Occasional snowflakes danced in my headlights, a quiet ballet accompanying my journey. Matthew and Regina's house, Mom's house, sat at the end of Oakwood Drive, a colonial two-story that had been in our family for generations. Now it sported a fresh coat of dove-gray paint and black shutters, Regina's modernization that had erased the cheerful yellow Mom had loved. I parked a block away and walked the rest of the distance, my footsteps crunching in the fresh snow. Their house was dark, as expected. It was barely 5:30 a.m., and they never rose before 8, even on Christmas. Regina claimed she needed her beauty sleep. Standing on their porch, the porch where I'd played as a child, where Mom had taught me to string popcorn garlands, where Dad had built us a swing that Matthew and Regina had promptly removed. I placed the silver package against the door. No note, no explanation, just the truth, wrapped in holiday paper. I took a deep breath, turned, and walked away. The world felt suddenly lighter, as if I'd been carrying this moment on my shoulders for years without realizing it. Back at home, I made tea and sat by the window watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. I tried to imagine their faces when they opened the package. Would Matthew recognize Mom's handwriting immediately? Would Regina's perfect composure finally crack? Would they call me angry and defensive, or would shame keep them silent? I didn't have to wait long to find out. My phone rang at 7:48 a.m. Matthew. I let it go to voicemail. It rang. Again. And again. Then Regina's name appeared on my screen. I silenced it. Text messages followed, a digital bombardment that I watched with detached curiosity. Susan, we need to talk. Pick up your phone. This is all a misunderstanding. You're overreacting. That will isn't even valid anymore. The last one made me smile. They knew. They knew exactly what I'd found. At 9:15, a knock on my door. I peered through the peephole to see Matthew standing there, snowflakes melting in his hair, his expression a mixture of anger and panic. Regina waited in their car at the curb, phone pressed to her ear. I opened the door but blocked the entrance. Susan. His voice was tight, controlled. What are you doing? Merry Christmas, Matthew. That paperwork you left, it's outdated. Mom changed. Her will before she died. You know that. I tilted my head. Did she? Because I have the notarized original right here, and a statement from Mr. Henley, Mom's lawyer for 20 years, confirming that while a new will was drafted, it was never properly executed or signed. He has quite a lot to say about the circumstances surrounding that draft, actually. Matthew's face paled. You've always been jealous of Regina. From the moment I brought her home, I met Regina 3 months after Mom died. I corrected quietly. 3 months, Matthew. Not while Mom was alive, as you've told everyone. You brought her to Thanksgiving and introduced her as your fiancée. You'd known her 6 weeks. He shifted uncomfortably. That's not. The timeline matters, I continued, because that's when things started disappearing from Mom's house. First her jewelry, then her art, then suddenly there was a new will, and you and Regina were living in her house, and I was renting a place that should have been mine. We offered to let you stay, as a guest, in my own home. A car door slammed. Regina was approaching, diamonds glittering at her throat even at this early hour, her camel hair coat belted tightly around her waist. "Susan," she said, her voice honey-sweet, "this is quite a scene you're creating on Christmas morning. What will the neighbors think?" "They might think," I replied evenly, "that it's strange how quickly Mom's possessions vanished after she died, or how her original will mysteriously disappeared, or how her medical bills somehow became my responsibility while you two took a Mediterranean cruise." Regina's smile tightened. "You're being dramatic, and frankly, a bit ungrateful. That frame we gave you was mine to begin with," I finished for her. "Just like Mom's house, her savings, her collection of first editions that somehow ended up at your charity auction." Matthew stepped between us. "Look, we can work this out privately, as a family." "Family?" The word tasted bitter on my tongue. Was it family when you excluded me from Mom's birthday celebration last year? Was it family when you told her doctors I wasn't authorized to receive updates on her condition? Was it family when you changed the locks on her house the day after her funeral? For once, both of them were silent. "I don't want a scene either," I said finally. "I just want what's rightfully mine, and I want you both to acknowledge what you did." "Or what?" Regina's voice had lost its sweetness. "You'll sue us? On a caregiver's salary? Please." I smiled then, a real smile that seemed to unnerve them both. "I already spoke with Mr. Henley. He's taking my case pro bono. Apparently, he had concerns about Mom's final days and the pressure she was under. He has quite a bit of documentation." Regina's face hardened. "You wouldn't dare." "I already have. Merry Christmas, Regina. I hope you enjoy the necklace. It might be the last extravagant gift you receive for a while." I stepped back inside and closed the door softly, not with a slam, but with the quiet finality of someone who has, at long last, found her voice. Through the window, I watched them argue on my sidewalk, before retreating to their car. As they drove away, I noticed my elderly neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, watching from her porch, a knowing look on her face. She raised her coffee mug in my direction, a small salute that somehow meant everything. I raised my teacup in return, a silent toast to the invisible woman who had finally decided to be seen. The days after Christmas unfolded like a strange dream. My phone continued its symphony of unanswered calls and messages, not just from Matthew and Regina now, but from extended family members who'd clearly gotten their version of events. Aunt Paula left a voicemail asking if I was going through something. Uncle Robert texted that family disputes should stay private. Cousin Jennifer, who I hadn't spoken to in years, suddenly wanted to grab coffee and catch up. I answered none of them. Instead, I did something I hadn't done in years. I took time off work. Marge, my supervisor at Peaceful Pines, didn't even question it. "About time," she said. "You haven't missed a day since your mother passed. 5 years without a break. 5 years of caring for others after spending 5 years before that caring for Mom. A decade of my life given to everyone but myself." On the third day after Christmas, I drove to the cemetery. Mom's grave was dusted with snow, her simple headstone standing quiet amid more elaborate monuments. I brushed away the white powder and traced her name with gloved fingers. Elizabeth Ann Whitmore. Beloved Mother, 1952-2020. "I think I finally understand what you were trying to tell me," I whispered, settling onto the small bench beside her plot. The cold seeped through my coat, but I didn't mind. During her final months, Mom had tried repeatedly to talk to me about about what would happen when she was gone. I'd always changed the subject, unable to face the reality of a world without her. Now I wondered if she'd been trying to warn me about Matthew, about the changes she'd seen in him since Regina entered the picture. "You always said the truth has a way of surfacing," I continued, my breath forming clouds in the winter air, like those spring bulbs you planted that kept coming up in the wrong places. No matter how many times we reseeded the lawn, they'd push through. I sat there for nearly an hour, remembering. The day Mom taught me to make her famous apple pie. The night we stayed up, until dawn reading Pride and Prejudice aloud, taking turns with the characters. The way she'd squeeze my hand 3 times, our secret code for "I love you." As I stood to leave, I noticed a fresh arrangement of white lilies on the grave next to Mom's. Dad's grave. I hadn't brought those. Matthew must have been here recently. The thought of him standing in this same spot, placing flowers for Dad, while ignoring Mom's final wishes, sent a fresh wave of anger through me. On my way home, I took a detour past the house on Oakwood Drive. A moving truck was parked in the driveway. My heart stuttered as I slowed down, watching men carry boxes from the house. Were they leaving already? Had my Christmas morning gift spooked them that badly? I parked across the street and observed for a while. The movers weren't taking furniture, just boxes. And they were bringing things in as well as taking them out. Not moving then, just rearranging. Perhaps hiding evidence? As I sat there, Regina emerged onto the porch, clipboard in hand, directing the movers with imperious gestures. She looked immaculate as always, her blonde hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail, her outfit coordinated in winter. Whites and creams. The diamond necklace was nowhere in sight. She happened to glance in my direction, and our eyes met across the distance. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then she smiled, a cold, calculated smile, and waved as if we were the best of friends. She pulled out her phone, still maintaining eye contact with me, and made a call. I started my car and drove away, unsettled by the exchange. At the first stoplight, my phone rang. Matthew. I declined the call, but a text followed immediately. We need to talk. Regina is filing a restraining order if you keep this up. A restraining order? For sitting in my car on a public street? I almost laughed at the absurdity, but something in my stomach twisted with unease. Regina was methodical, calculating. She wouldn't make idle threats. Back at home, I made a decision. I picked up my phone and called Mr. Henley, Mom's lawyer. I've been expecting your call, he said, his voice warm and familiar. He'd been Dad's friend before becoming our family lawyer, and I'd always felt safe in his presence. How are you holding up, Susan? They're threatening me with a restraining order, he sighed. I'm not surprised. It's a typical intimidation tactic. Have you done anything that could reasonably be construed as harassment? I sat in my car across from their house today. Regina saw me and made a show of calling someone. That's hardly grounds for a restraining order, but it might be best to avoid any contact or proximity for now. We want to keep our position unimpeachable. What exactly is our position, Mr. Henley? I asked, suddenly tired. What am I hoping to accomplish here? There was a pause. What do you want, Susan? Truly? The question caught me off guard. What did I want? The house? Yes, it was rightfully mine, but did I actually want to live there now, with all these bitter memories? Mom's possessions? Most of the ones that mattered to me were probably gone. Money. I'd never cared much about that. I want them to acknowledge what they did, I said finally. I want the truth to be known. And I want to stop feeling invisible. Mr. Henley's voice softened. Then that's what we'll work toward. The legal aspects, the house, the estate, those are just tools. The real goal is your peace of mind. After we hung up, I walked through my small rental, seeing it with fresh eyes. It wasn't much, a one-bedroom cottage on the edge of town, but it was mine. Or at least, the space inside it was mine. I'd filled it with books, plants, the few keepsakes I'd managed to salvage from Mom's house before Matthew and Regina took over. On the mantel sat a collection of sea glass Mom and I had gathered during our last vacation together, 2 years before her diagnosis. Beside it, a photo of us at the beach, our faces sun-kissed and smiling. I picked it up, studying our expressions. We looked so happy, so unaware of what was coming. I set the photo back and walked to my desk, where I kept my most precious possession, Mom's recipe book. Not the fancy published cookbook Regina had placed prominently on the kitchen shelf for show, but the actual notebook where Mom had written down family recipes complete with margin notes, food stains, and the occasional pressed flower or leaf. I flipped through it, running my fingers over her handwriting. Between the pages for apple cake and beef stew, I found a pressed violet, Mom's favorite flower, and tucked behind it, something I'd forgotten, a small envelope addressed to me in Mom's shaky hand. My heart racing, I carefully opened it. Inside was a single sheet of notepaper, dated just weeks before she died. My darling Susan, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and things have probably become difficult. Matthew has changed since meeting R. I've tried to protect what's yours, but I fear I may not have been strong enough toward the end. Remember the loose floorboard in my closet? The one where you used to hide your diary? Look there. All. My love. Mom. The loose floorboard. I'd completely forgotten about it. A childhood hiding place in Mom's walk-in closet, where I'd stashed treasures and secrets as a girl. And now, apparently, Mom had hidden something there for me. Something Matthew and Regina hadn't found. Something that might change everything. The next morning, I sat across from Mr. Henley in his downtown office, the letter trembling in my hands. A hidden compartment, he mused, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. And you're certain they don't know about it? It was my secret place as a child. Mom only knew because she caught me hiding my diary there once. I folded the letter carefully. The question is, how do I get access? They've made it clear I'm not welcome, and now they're threatening legal action if I go. Near the house, Mr. Henley leaned back in his leather chair, fingers steepled. At 72, he had the quiet confidence of someone who had seen every type of human drama unfold and still maintained faith in justice. Legally, you have grounds to enter the property, he said. The probate situation is unresolved, and there's sufficient evidence to suggest the current will was executed under duress. However, he held up a hand as I started to speak. Practically speaking, it would be better to avoid confrontation. So what do you suggest? He smiled, a glint of mischief in his eyes. You might be surprised to learn that I still hold a set of keys to the house. Elizabeth insisted I keep them after Harold passed in case of emergency. Technically, as the executor of the original will, I have authority to enter the premises to assess the estate. Hope flickered in my chest. When? They'll be watching for you, but not necessarily for me. I have a meeting with Matthew tomorrow. He requested it, actually. Presumably to discuss how to handle your Christmas gift. He chuckled. I could take a look then, if you tell me exactly where to find this compartment. I described the location in detail. The master bedroom closet, the third floorboard from the back wall, how it lifted if you pressed on the right edge. Mr. Henley took notes, nodding. What do you think she might have left there? He asked. I don't know. More documentation, maybe? Another copy of the will? Or just something she wanted me to have? Well, we'll find out soon enough. He patted my hand. In the meantime, keep your distance as we discussed. And Susan, try to rest. You look exhausted. I was exhausted. Years of accumulated fatigue had settled into my bones, making even simple tasks feel monumental. But as I left Mr. Henley's office, I felt something else stirring beneath the exhaustion. Curiosity. Maybe even hope. The next day dragged endlessly. I cleaned my cottage, reorganized my bookshelves, took a long walk around the neighborhood, anything to keep my mind occupied while Mr. Henley met with Matthew. Every few minutes, I checked my phone, expecting a call or text. Finally, at 4:37 p.m., my phone rang. I have it, Mr. Henley said without preamble. Can you meet me at my office? Now? 20 minutes later, I was seated across from him again, staring at a small wooden box on his desk. It was Mom's jewelry box, the one I'd thought had disappeared along with her good pearls and Dad's watch. It was exactly where you said, Mr. Henley explained. Matthew was agitated during our meeting, kept checking his watch. Said Regina wasn't feeling well, so we wrapped up quickly. I asked to use the restroom before leaving, the one off the master bedroom, and that gave me just enough time. My hands hovered over the box. Did you look inside? No, whatever it is, it was meant for you. With trembling fingers, I lifted the lid. Inside, nestled on faded velvet, lay several items. Mom's wedding ring, a small USB drive, an old key I didn't recognize, and an envelope with my name on it. I opened the envelope first. Another letter, longer this time. My dearest Susan, if you're reading this, then you found my final gift to you. I'm sorry for the secrecy, but as my illness progressed, I became aware of certain manipulations. Matthew changed after meeting Regina. At first, I thought it was natural. A man in love, eager to please his new partner. But then things began to disappear. Important papers were misplaced. Conversations I clearly remembered were denied. The USB drive contains copies of my original will, financial records, and recordings of several conversations that troubled me. The key opens a safe deposit box at Lancaster Community Bank, box number 247. There, you'll find the deed to the house in your name, transferred before I became ill, along with some family heirlooms I wanted you to have. I'm sorry to burden you with this, my darling girl. You've already carried so much. But I couldn't bear the thought of everything your father and I worked for, everything we meant to leave to both our children, being taken through deception. Whatever you choose to do with this information is up to you. Know that I am proud of you. Your quiet strength has always been your greatest gift, even when others mistook it for weakness. All my love, forever and always, Mom. Tears blurred my vision as I set down the letter. Mr. Henley handed me a tissue, waiting patiently as I composed myself. She knew, I whispered. She knew what they were planning, and she found a way to protect me even then. Elizabeth was always smarter than people gave her credit for, Mr. Henley said gently. Especially that Regina woman. Treated her like she was senile toward the end, but your mother's mind was sharp as ever. I picked up the USB drive, turning it over in my palm. What do you think is on here? Let's find out. He gestured to his computer. The drive contained exactly what Mom's letter had described. Scanned copies of legal documents, financial records showing suspicious transfers from her accounts after she became ill, and, most damning of all, audio. Recordings. Mom had apparently started recording conversations in her home during her final months. We listened in stunned silence to Regina's voice, syrupy sweet but undercut with menace, pressuring Mom about changes to her will. Matthew's voice, uncomfortable but compliant, agreeing that Susan doesn't need the house, Mom. She doesn't even have a family. Mom's voice, weak but determined, insisting that her wishes be respected. The final recording was the most disturbing. Regina, thinking Mom was asleep, instructing Matthew on how to dispose of personal items before Susan can claim them. Mr. Henley stopped the playback, his expression grave. This changes everything. I stared at the jewelry box, at Mom's wedding ring glinting in the late afternoon light. What do we do now? That depends, he said, studying me carefully. What do you want, Susan? Justice? Revenge? Or simply what's rightfully yours? I thought about Matthew's face when I confronted him on Christmas morning, about Regina's cold smile as she waved from the porch, about the years of silent suffering, of being pushed to the margins of my own family story. I want the truth to be known, I said finally, and then I want peace. January arrived with a bitter cold snap, the kind that freezes pipes and turns breath into clouds of white vapor. I spent New Year's Eve alone, watching the ball drop on TV with a cup of tea while the rest of Lancaster celebrated with champagne and noisemakers. It felt fitting somehow, this quiet transition from one chapter to the next. The first week of January, Mr. Henley called. We have a court date, he announced. January 17th, just a preliminary hearing, but it's a start. I decided to move forward legally after listening to Mom's recordings. Not out of vengeance, but because some truths need to be spoken aloud to be properly laid to rest. I wasn't just fighting for the house or Mom's possessions anymore. I was fighting for her voice, her final wishes, that had been so callously ignored. Will I need to testify? I asked, anxiety coiling in my stomach. Public speaking had never been my strong suit, and the thought of facing Matthew and Regina across a courtroom made me slightly nauseated. Not at this stage, Mr. Henley assured me. This is just to establish the validity of our claims and set the framework for discovery. But Susan, his voice softened. They'll be there. Are you prepared for that? I'll have to be, I said, more confidently than I felt. The day after that call, I ventured downtown to Lancaster Community Bank. Box number 247 had indeed been registered in my name, with annual fees automatically deducted from Mom's account. Inside, exactly as her letter promised, I found the deed to the house, transferred to me 3 years before her death, properly notarized and filed, along with several family heirlooms, Grandma's pearl earrings, Dad's pocket watch, Mom's first edition of Jane Eyre, and a small leather album containing photos Mom had evidently hidden away for safekeeping. I leafed through the album, tears welling as I rediscovered forgotten moments. Mom and Dad on their wedding day, Matthew and me building a snowman in the front yard, family vacations to the coast, graduation days, birthdays. The tapestry of our lives together, preserved despite Matthew and Regina's efforts to erase it. The most surprising document in the safe deposit box was a letter addressed to Matthew, sealed in an envelope with "to be delivered in the event of a dispute," written in Mom's hand. I stared at it for a long moment, tempted to open it to see what Mom had wanted to tell him. But it wasn't meant for me. Whatever words she had for my brother, whether of disappointment, forgiveness, or something else entirely, they were between the two of them. I tucked the letter into my purse along with the deed and the heirlooms. Later, I asked Mr. Henley if we should send it to Matthew before the hearing. Let's hold on to it. For now, he advised. It might be useful at a strategic moment. The days until the hearing crawled by with excruciating slowness. I returned to work at Peaceful Pines, finding comfort in the routine of caring for others. The residents there had become something of a surrogate family to me over the years, especially those who rarely received visitors of their own. We were a community of the overlooked, finding value in each other when the outside world had moved on without us. You seem different lately, observed Ruth, my favorite resident, as I helped her arrange a jigsaw puzzle one afternoon. At 93, Ruth had the uncanny ability to see through pretense. More present, I smiled, fitting a piece into place. Do I? Like you've remembered something important about yourself. Her gnarled fingers sorted through the puzzle pieces with surprising dexterity. Something you'd forgotten. I considered her words. Maybe I have. Good. She nodded, satisfied. About time. The morning of the hearing, I woke before dawn. I dressed with unusual care, selecting a navy blue dress I'd bought years ago for a cousin's wedding but had never worn. I arranged my hair in a simple updo, applied light makeup, and put on Mom's pearl earrings. The woman who gazed back at me from the mirror looked poised, dignified, someone who deserved to be seen and heard. Mr. Henley picked me up at 8:30. You look lovely, he said as I slid into the passenger seat of his Volvo. Ready? As I'll ever be. The Lancaster County Courthouse was a stately brick building downtown, its steps, already busy with people despite the early hour. My stomach tightened as we climbed those steps, Mr. Henley's hand supportive at my elbow. Inside, the marble floors echoed with footsteps and murmured conversations, the high ceilings creating a cavernous effect that made me feel small. Courtroom C, Mr. Henley directed, consulting a notice board. We were early, but Matthew and Regina were already there, seated at a table with their lawyer, a sharp-featured woman in an expensive suit who I recognized from local television commercials. Diane Frost, Mr. Henley whispered. Aggressive but not particularly imaginative. Matthew looked up as we entered, his expression unreadable. Regina studiously avoided eye contact, examining her manicure as if it were the most fascinating thing in the room. The diamond necklace glittered at her throat, a deliberate choice, I was certain. We took our seats at the opposite table. Mr. Henley arranged his files methodically, his movements unhurried and confident. I kept my eyes forward, though I could feel Matthew's gaze burning into the side of my face. All rise, called the bailiff as Judge Miriam Harper entered the courtroom, a black woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and penetrating eyes. We stood, then sat at her direction. Case number 2025 CV0127, Whitmore versus Whitmore, announced the clerk. Petition to contest probate. Judge Harper peered over her reading glasses. I've reviewed the initial filings. This appears to be a dispute over the estate of Elizabeth Whitmore, deceased December 2020. Mr. Henley, as you represent the petitioner, would you like to make an opening statement? Mr. Henley rose smoothly. Thank you, Your Honor. This case involves more than a simple probate dispute. It involves a systematic effort to defraud Susan Whitmore of her rightful inheritance through undue influence and possible forgery. We have substantial evidence that the deceased, Elizabeth Whitmore, was pressured during her final illness to change her will in favor of her son Matthew and his wife Regina, contrary to her clear and documented wishes. Ms. Frost was on her feet immediately. Objection, Your Honor. Counsel is making unsubstantiated allegations of criminal behavior. I'm simply outlining the nature of our petition, Mr. Henley countered mildly. And I assure the court, every allegation is supported by documentation, including audio recordings made by the deceased herself. A ripple of surprise passed through the courtroom. I risked a glance at Matthew, whose face had gone pale. Regina was whispering furiously to Ms. Frost, her composure cracking for the first time. Judge Harper raised an eyebrow. Audio recordings? Yes, Your Honor. Mrs. Whitmore, apparently suspecting manipulation, began recording conversations in her home during her final months. These recordings clearly demonstrate undue influence being exerted regarding her will and the disposition of her property. Ms. Frost's voice rose. This is the first we're hearing of any recordings. If they exist, they should have been disclosed during discovery. Discovery has not yet begun, Ms. Frost, Judge Harper pointed out dryly. That's part of what we're here to establish today. She turned to Mr. Henley. Continue. Furthermore, Your Honor, We have documentation showing that the deceased transferred ownership of her primary residence to Susan Whitmore 3 years before her death, well before any questions of competency could arise. This deed was properly filed but subsequently misplaced during the probate process. By now, Regina's face had flushed an angry red, her knuckles white as she gripped the edge of the table. Matthew looked shell-shocked, his gaze darting between me and his lawyer. As Mr. Henley continued outlining our case, I sat straight in my chair, my mother's pearl earrings catching the light. For the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. I felt seen, not just by the court, but by myself. The truth had found its voice, and it sounded remarkably like my own. The preliminary hearing concluded with Judge Harper setting a full hearing date for February 14th, Valentine's Day, ironically enough. Discovery would proceed in the meantime, with all documents and recordings to be shared between legal teams within 7 days. As we rose to leave, Matthew intercepted us at the courtroom door, Regina hovering anxiously behind him. "Susan," he said, his voice low and urgent, "we need to talk, privately." Mr. Henley stepped slightly in front of me. "Any communication should go through counsel, Mr. Whitmore." "This is between me and my sister," Matthew insisted, his eyes pleading. "5 minutes, please." I hesitated, then nodded. "It's all right, Mr. Henley. 5 minutes." We stepped into an empty conference room off the main hallway. Regina tried to follow, but Matthew shook his head. "Just us, Regina. Wait outside." She looked as if she might argue, then pressed her lips together and retreated, closing the door with more force than necessary. Matthew and I stood facing each other in the silent room. He looked older somehow. The boyish charm faded, replaced by worry lines around his eyes. "Recordings?" he finally said. "Mom was recording us?" "Yes." "And you've listened to them?" "I have." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it made my heart ache. It was what Dad used to do when he was stressed. "I never meant for things to go this far," he said quietly. "You have to believe me, Susan. When I met Regina, everything happened so fast. She has this way of making you see things her way, making her ideas feel like your own. That doesn't excuse what you did. I know." He looked down. "After Mom got sick, Regina kept saying we needed to protect the family assets, that you wouldn't know how to manage them, that you'd waste what Mom and Dad had built. I took care of Mom for 5 years," I said, anger flaring. "I managed her. Medications, her doctor's appointments, her finances, everything. While you were where exactly? Oh, right. Building your career in Philadelphia." He had the grace to look ashamed. "I know. I should have been there more. But Susan, you have to understand. Regina comes from money. Her family has certain expectations about lifestyle, about status. When her father cut her off for marrying beneath her station, she was desperate to prove him wrong. So you decided to steal from your own sister? To rewrite Mom's will when she was too weak to resist? It wasn't like that. Not at first." He leaned against the conference table. "It started small. Regina redecorating a room, moving some furniture to storage, suggesting Mom update her will to include provisions for Regina's interior design. Business, things that seemed reasonable. And the diamond necklace? Was that reasonable too?" He flinched. "That was Regina's idea. She knew it would hurt you. The picture frame. I swear I didn't know it was broken until you opened it. She told me she'd found it in the attic. Thought you might want it for sentimental reasons." "Stop lying, Matthew," I said tiredly. "The recordings make it very clear what was happening. You and Regina systematically removed my presence from Mom's house, and from her will, while she was dying. You can't rewrite that history now." "What do you want?" he asked after a long moment. "The house? Fine, take it. Money? We can arrange something. Just call off the lawyers. Don't make this public. Regina's family will—" "This isn't about Regina's family," I interrupted. "This is about ours, about Mom's final wishes, about the truth, he repeated bitterly. "What good will that do anyone? It'll just tear what's left of our family apart." I studied my brother's face, the face I'd known all my life, now transformed by choices I couldn't comprehend. Our family was torn apart the moment you chose Regina over Mom's wishes. Over me. That's not fair. "No, it wasn't fair," I agreed. "None of it was fair. Not Mom getting sick. Not me giving up my life to care for her. Not you swooping in afterward with your new wife to claim everything she left behind. I reached into my purse and pulled out the letter from the safe deposit box. Mom left this for you. I haven't opened it. He took it, turning the envelope over in his hands. What is it? I don't know. But it was in a safe deposit box along with the deed to the house, which, by the way, has been in my name for 3 years. Mom transferred ownership before she ever met Regina. The color drained from his face. What? She must have had a premonition. Or maybe she just wanted to make sure I'd be taken care of after everything I'd sacrificed. I moved toward the door. Read it or don't. But our hearing is on February 14th, and I'll be there with the recordings, the deed, and everything else Mom left to protect me from you and Regina. Susan, wait. But I was already opening the door, where Regina stood pretending she hadn't been trying to listen through the wood. He's all yours, I told her, stepping past. Mr. Henley was waiting in the hallway. Everything all right? Yes, I said, surprised to find I meant it. Everything is exactly as it should be. That night I dreamed of Mom. We were in her garden, deadheading roses together as we used to do on summer evenings. The air was sweet with their fragrance, golden light slanting through the trees. You found it, she said, smiling. I knew you would. I wish you'd told me directly, I replied, snipping a faded bloom. She shook her head. You weren't ready to hear it then. You needed to find your own strength first. I'm still not sure I have. Oh, my darling. She cupped my cheek with a garden-gloved hand. You've always been the strongest of us all. You just didn't know it. I woke with tears on my pillow, but a strange peace in my heart. Whatever happened next, whether Matthew read Mom's letter or not, whether we proceeded to the full hearing or settled, I had already reclaimed something precious, my voice. The broken frame Matthew had given me for Christmas still sat on my dresser, the glass shattered, the backing loose. On impulse, I picked it up, carefully removing the broken pieces. Behind the backing, hidden all this time, I found what I'd suspected might be there, the missing photograph of Mom, Matthew, and me at Lake Harris, our faces young and untroubled, our futures still unwritten. I slipped the photo free, studied it for a long moment, then placed it in a new frame, one without cracks or missing pieces. A fresh start, like the one I was finally ready to embrace. February 14th dawned clear and cold, the sky a pristine blue that belied the emotional storm brewing within me. In the week since the preliminary hearing, life had taken on a strange dual quality. On the surface, my daily routines continued unchanged, but underneath, everything had shifted. Mr. Henley called regularly with updates. Matthew and Regina's lawyer had requested multiple delays, citing needs for additional discovery time and expert analysis of the audio recordings. Judge Harper had denied most of these requests, seeming to sense the delaying tactics for what they were. I'd received no further communication from Matthew after our courthouse conversation. Whatever Mom's letter had contained, he'd kept it to himself. Part of me had hoped, foolishly perhaps, that her words might have reached him, might have awakened some dormant sense of conscience. But as the days passed with no word, that hope had dimmed. Lancaster had settled into the dreary middle stretch of winter, where the charm of Christmas snow gives way to dirty slush and salt-stained sidewalks. I'd taken to walking in the early mornings before work, watching the town slowly wake as shopkeepers unlocked their doors and school buses began their routes. There was something comforting in these rhythms, in the knowledge that life continued its steady pulse regardless of personal dramas. On these walks, I'd occasionally pass the house on Oakwood Drive. I never stopped or lingered, but I couldn't help noticing small changes. Moving boxes on the porch, a realtor's lockbox appearing on the front door, the curtains drawn day and night. Signs of retreat, perhaps, or simply preparation for whatever came next. Ruth, my favorite resident at Peaceful Pines, had taken to asking about the court business whenever I visited her room. "Today's the day, isn't it?" she asked that morning, as I helped her arrange Valentine's cards from her grandchildren on her windowsill. "You're hearing with that brother of yours?" I smiled, carefully propping up a glitter-covered card. "News travels fast. Marge told me," she admitted, naming my supervisor. "Don't be cross with her. She's just concerned. We all are." Ruth patted my hand, her skin tissue paper thin over blue veins. "You going to wear that pretty navy dress again?" "I thought I might." She nodded approvingly. "Good. You look like yourself in that dress, not like someone trying to be someone else." I paused, struck by her observation. "Is that how I usually look? Like I'm trying to be someone else?" Ruth considered this, her faded blue eyes thoughtful. "Not trying, exactly. More like hiding. Keeping yourself small so others can feel big. She straightened a crooked card. My Harold was like that. Let his brother run roughshod over him for years. Always thought it was kindness, but really, it was fear. Fear of standing in his own light. And did he ever change? I asked, curious despite myself. A smile creased her wrinkled face. Oh, yes. Right after his brothers sold their father's fishing boat without asking. Harold was 62 years old, standing on that empty dock when something in him just woke up. She chuckled at the memory. Came home and said he'd finally realized the difference between being kind and being a doormat. I finished arranging the cards, my mind turning over her words. I should get going. Wish me luck? You don't need luck, Ruth said firmly. Just keep standing in your own light. The courtroom was more crowded than I'd expected. News of the case had apparently circulated through Lancaster's gossip network, drawing various acquaintances and distant relatives curious to witness the Whitmore family drama firsthand. I spotted Aunt Paula and Uncle Robert in the back row, looking uncomfortable. Several of Mom's old friends from her garden club. Even Mrs. Patterson, my elderly neighbor, had made the effort to attend. I walked down the center aisle with Mr. Henley, feeling their eyes on me but keeping my gaze steady, focused on the path ahead. We took our seats at the plaintiff's table, Mr. Henley arranging his materials with characteristic precision. The defense table remained empty. Judge Harper entered, and we all rose. After she took her seat, the bailiff called the case. Still, no sign of Matthew, Regina, or their lawyer. Your Honor, Mr. Henley began, it appears the defendants may be absent. Judge Harper frowned. Mr. Clerk, has the court received any communication from Ms. Frost or her clients? The clerk shuffled through some papers. Yes, Your Honor. A courier delivered this envelope this morning. He handed it to the judge. She opened it, reading quickly, her expression shifting from annoyance to surprise. I see. She looked up at me. Ms. Whitmore, it seems your brother and his wife are withdrawing their objections to your petition. They are conceding all claims to the property at 47 Oakwood Drive and any disputed assets from your mother's estate. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. I sat frozen, unable to process what I was hearing. Furthermore, Judge Harper continued, they have submitted a notarized statement acknowledging that the will presented during the initial probate was executed under questionable circumstances and should be set aside in favor of the original document. She glanced at Mr. Henley. I believe you have a copy of that original will? Yes, Your Honor. He slid a document across to the clerk. I finally found my voice. May I ask if there was any explanation for their absence or this sudden concession? Judge Harper consulted the letter again. Mr. Whitmore indicates that he and Mrs. Whitmore have relocated to Arizona for, quote, a fresh start, and that this decision comes after, quote, careful reflection on family obligations and moral responsibilities. She set the letter down. Given these developments, unless there are other matters to address, I'm prepared to rule in favor of the plaintiff and close this case. Mr. Henley looked at me questioningly. I nodded. We have no objection, Your Honor, he confirmed. Very well. She made a notation in her file. The court finds in favor of Susan Whitmore. The property at 47 Oakwood Drive is confirmed as her legal possession, along with all assets specified in Elizabeth Whitmore's original will dated March 15, 2017. Case closed. She struck her gavel once, the sound echoing in the suddenly quiet room. It was over. Just like that. As people began filing out, many stopping to congratulate me, I sat stunned, trying to make sense of Matthew's abrupt surrender. Had Mom's letter affected him so deeply? Or had the mounting evidence simply made fighting a losing proposition? Mr. Henley squeezed my shoulder. Congratulations, Susan. Not the dramatic confrontation we prepared for, but perhaps a cleaner resolution. I don't understand, I admitted. After everything, they just gave up? Sometimes people surprise you, he said with a small smile. Even those who've disappointed you most. As we gathered our things to leave, the clerk approached with another envelope. Ms. Whitmore, this was included with the submission from your brother. It's addressed to you personally. I took it with trembling fingers. Unlike the formal court documents, this was a simple white envelope with my name written in Matthew's familiar handwriting. Inside was a single page, not a legal document, but a handwritten letter. Would you like a moment? Mr. Henley asked tactfully. I nodded, and he moved away to give me privacy. Taking a deep breath, I unfolded the letter and began to read. Matthew's handwriting was hurried, less precise than usual, as if the words had poured out faster than his hand could capture them. Susan, by the time you read this, Regina and I will be in Scottsdale. Her cousin has offered me a position in his real estate firm. A fresh start for both of us. Mom's letter changed everything. I don't know if you'll ever forgive me. I'm not sure I deserve forgiveness. But I wanted you to know that I finally understand what happened. What I allowed to happen. Mom wrote about the day you found her collapsed in the bathroom, how you moved into her house without hesitation while I made excuses about work commitments. She described the nights you slept in a chair beside her bed, the appointments you took her to, the meals you prepared when she couldn't hold a spoon. She cataloged 5 years of sacrifices I was too selfish to see. She also wrote about her conversations with Regina, conversations I wasn't present for, how Regina suggested clearing out clutter while you were at the pharmacy, how she rearranged Mom's medications, causing confusion, how she whispered that you were probably stealing from the estate, planting seeds of doubt that I shamefully allowed to grow. Mom saw through us both, and still, she loved me enough to give me a chance to make things right. I've arranged for all her belongings to be returned to the house. Everything we took, everything Regina sold or donated that we could track down. The key is with Mr. Henley. The picture frame was Regina's idea. She found it in Mom's nightstand and deliberately broke the glass. I let her do it. I let her do so many things that I knew, deep down, were wrong. That Christmas Eve, watching your face as you opened it, something inside me finally rebelled. But I was too much of a coward to stand up to her then. I'm not asking for reconciliation. Some bridges once burned can't be rebuilt. But I hope someday you might find it in your heart to remember the brother I was before all this, the one who taught you to ride a bike and helped you with your science projects. He's still in here somewhere, trying to find his way back. The house is yours, as it always should have been. Regina is filing for divorce when we reach Arizona. Turns out, failing to secure the inheritance she counted on revealed some truths about our marriage that I've been avoiding for too long. Take care of yourself, Susan. Mom was right about you all along. You were always the strongest of us all. Matthew. I read the letter twice, then carefully folded it and slipped it back into the envelope. A complex tangle of emotions knotted in my chest. Relief, vindication, a strange sense of loss, and underneath it all, a tentative, fragile hope. Not for reconciliation. Matthew was right about that. Some damages couldn't be undone, but for closure. For the possibility that somewhere in Arizona, my brother might be finding his way back to the person he was meant to be. Mr. Henley returned, offering me a sympathetic smile. Ready to go? I nodded, gathering my purse and coat. As we walked out of the courtroom, several people approached with congratulations and questions, but I politely deflected them. This victory, if that's what it was, felt too personal, too bittersweet for public discussion. Outside, a light snow had begun to fall, dusting the courthouse steps with white. Valentine's Day decorations adorned the storefronts along Main Street, red hearts and cupids that suddenly seemed incongruous with the quiet gravity I felt. I'd like to see the house, I said suddenly. Today. Mr. Henley nodded. I have the key right here. Would you like me to come with you? I considered this, then shook my head. I think I need to do this alone. He handed me the key, a simple brass one on a ring with a small heart-shaped keychain. Mom's keychain, the one that had gone missing from her purse in her final weeks. Call if you need anything, he said, squeezing my hand. Anything at all. The drive to Oakwood Drive felt surreal, as if I were moving through a dream. Snow continued to fall in gentle flurries, softening the edges of the winter-bare trees and empty gardens. I pulled into the driveway of Mom's house, my house now, and sat for a moment, gathering my courage. The exterior was still painted that dove gray Regina had chosen, the cheerful yellow buried beneath layers of someone else's taste. But even that couldn't change the essential character of the place. The wide front porch where Mom had taught me to shell peas, the bay window where our Christmas tree had always stood, the maple tree Dad had planted when I was born, now towering over the roof. I climbed the porch steps, my heart pounding, and slid the key into the lock. It turned smoothly, the door swinging open with a familiar creak. The sound catapulted me back in time, to childhood returns from school, to adult visits home, to the day I'd moved in to care for Mom, to the day after her funeral when I'd found the locks changed. The interior was eerily quiet, caught in a strange limbo between Regina's sterile modernization and hasty abandonment. Moving boxes were stacked in the foyer, some sealed, others open and half emptied, as if the packers had been interrupted mid-task. A layer of dust covered the surfaces, evidence of weeks without habitation. I moved through the rooms slowly, reacquainting myself with spaces that had once been as familiar as my own heartbeat. The living room where we'd opened Christmas presents, the dining room where we'd celebrated birthdays and Thanksgivings, the kitchen where Mom had taught me to bake, her famous apple pie. Upstairs, I paused at the door to Mom's bedroom. This would be the hardest part. Taking a deep breath, I pushed the door open. To my surprise, the room had been restored, not to Regina's minimalist vision, but to something closer to how Mom had kept it. Her quilted bedspread, her reading lamp, her collection of blue glass bottles on the windowsill, even her books had been returned to the shelves, arranged in the haphazard order she'd preferred, fiction mingling with gardening guides and biographies. On the nightstand sat a framed photograph I recognized immediately. Mom in her garden, laughing at the camera, a smudge of dirt on her cheek and a trowel in her hand. I'd taken that photo the summer before her diagnosis. Beside it lay a small package wrapped in simple, white paper with my name written on it, not in Matthew's hand this time, but in a feminine script I didn't recognize. Curious, I opened it to find a velvet jewelry box containing the diamond necklace Regina had received that Christmas Eve. A note was tucked inside. This belongs with Elizabeth's daughter. It was purchased with Whitmore family money and should stay with the Whitmore family. I stared at the glittering stones, remembering how they had caught the Christmas lights as Regina preened. Now they seemed cold, lifeless, beautiful but empty of meaning compared to Mom's pearl earrings or the sea glass we'd collected together. I closed the box and set it aside. Then I walked to the closet, the walk-in where the loose floorboard had hidden Mom's final messages to me. The closet had been emptied of Regina's designer clothes, leaving only a few of Mom's old sweaters and dresses that I'd stored there years ago, apparently deemed not worth taking. I knelt, pressing the edge of the third floorboard from the back wall. It lifted easily, revealing the empty space beneath. Mom's jewelry box was gone, of course, safely in my possession now, but something else had been placed there. A small potted violet, its purple blooms vibrant against the dark wood. Mom's favorite flower, a living thing amid all this dust and memory. A reminder that even in empty spaces, new life could take root. Spring came early to Lancaster that year. By mid-March, crocuses had pushed through the soil in Mom's garden, my garden now, their purple and yellow blooms nodding in the gentle breeze. I'd spent weekends clearing winter debris, turning the earth, preparing for new growth. The physical labor felt healing, connecting me to Mom in a way that transcended memory. The house on Oakwood Drive was slowly transforming. Not back to what it had been. That would have been impossible, a futile attempt to recapture the past, but into something new, something that honored what came before while creating space for what might be. I'd kept some of Regina's changes, the ones that genuinely improved the space, the updated kitchen appliances, the expanded bathroom, the refinished hardwood floors. But I'd painted over her cold grays with warmer colors, a buttery yellow for the living room, a soft sage for the kitchen, colors that reminded me of spring and growth and possibility. The first difficult decision had been whether to move in or sell. The house held so many memories, both beautiful and painful. For weeks after the hearing, I'd continued living in my rental, visiting Oakwood Drive only to oversee repairs or sort through belongings. But gradually, I found myself lingering longer, sometimes sitting in Mom's reading nook with a cup of tea, sometimes working in the garden until dusk fell. One evening in late February, as I was leaving, Mrs. Patterson from next door called out to me from her porch. "You know, that house has been waiting for you," she said, wrapping her cardigan tighter against the chill. "Ever since Elizabeth passed, it's felt empty, even with those other two living in it." I smiled, climbing her porch steps to chat properly. Mrs. Patterson had been Mom's friend for over 30 years, their shared love of gardening bridging the generation gap between them. "I'm not sure I belong here anymore," I admitted. "Too many ghosts." She chuckled. "Oh, ghosts don't mind company. It's being alone they can't stand." She patted the porch swing beside her, and I sat. "You know, after Harold died, my Harold, not Ruth's, I almost sold this place. Couldn't bear the emptiness. Then one morning I woke up and realized the house wasn't empty at all. It was full of Harold, his laughter, his terrible singing in the shower, his habit of leaving coffee cups on every available surface. I nodded, understanding dawning. And that was a comfort? Eventually, once I stopped fighting it. She reached over and patted my hand. Elizabeth is still there, you know, in the kitchen where she taught you to bake, in the garden she loved, even in those wallpaper flowers she insisted on keeping in the downstairs bathroom, despite my telling her they went out of style in 1987. We both laughed, and something loosened in my chest. Maybe Mrs. Patterson was right. Maybe I'd been thinking about this all wrong, seeing the house as a battlefield when it could be a sanctuary. The next day, I gave notice on my rental. By April 1st, I was fully moved in. The diamond necklace remained in its velvet box, locked in the safe deposit box at Lancaster Community Bank. I had no desire to wear it, but selling it felt wrong somehow. Perhaps someday I'd know what to do with it. Work at Peaceful Pines continued to provide structure and purpose. Ruth had taken to asking for renovation, updates during our visits, offering opinions on paint colors and furniture arrangements with the confidence of someone who had decorated many homes over her 93 years. "You need some life in that house," she declared one afternoon as I helped her with a new jigsaw puzzle. This one a garden scene with a riot of colorful flowers. Plants, music, maybe a cat. I smiled, fitting a piece into my place. "I have plants. The whole garden is coming back to life." "Not the same thing." She sorted through puzzle pieces with methodical precision. "Inside plants. The kind you talk to when no one's looking." "I'll consider it," I promised. "And what about people? You having people over?" The question gave me pause. Since the hearing, I'd kept largely to myself, declining invitations from coworkers, making polite excuses to neighbors. The thought of entertaining in the house, of filling it with conversation and laughter again, felt simultaneously appealing and terrifying. "Not yet," I admitted. Ruth fixed me with her penetrating gaze. "Don't wait too long, Susan. Houses need voices to keep them warm." Her words stayed with me, and the following weekend I invited Mrs. Patterson over for tea. We sat in the kitchen, sunshine streaming through the windows, and talked about Mom, about gardens, about the changing seasons. It felt good, right, to have another person in the space. "You've done wonders," she said, looking around appreciatively. "Elizabeth would approve, even of the sage green paint," I teased. Mom had always preferred blue for kitchens. Especially that. She was always telling me she wished she'd been braver with color. Mrs. Patterson sipped her tea. "Have you heard anything from Matthew?" I shook my head. "Not since the letter. I know he's in Arizona. That's all. Might be for the best. At least for now." She set down her cup. "Time has a way of softening even the hardest edges, you know. My sister and I didn't speak for 12 years after a fight over our mother's china. Seems ridiculous now, but at the time, did you reconcile eventually?" She nodded. "At our cousin's funeral. Life has a way of reminding you what matters." She glanced at the clock. "Goodness, I've kept you talking all afternoon. You probably have plans." I walked her to the door, promising to help with her tomato planting the following weekend. As she headed down the porch steps, she turned back. "You know what this place needs? A proper housewarming. Nothing fancy, just a few friends, some good food. A way of saying, this house has a new chapter now." The idea took root in my mind, growing stronger in the days that followed. A small gathering, a fresh start, a declaration, perhaps, that I was ready to step fully into this new life. I began with a simple list. Mrs. Patterson, of course. Ruth, if the retirement home would allow an evening out with proper escort. Mr. Henley and his wife. Marge from work and her husband. The librarian I'd befriended during my weekly visits. The owner of the coffee shop where Mom and I used to get hot chocolate. As the list grew, I felt a simultaneous expansion within myself, as if by opening the house to others, I was opening something long closed in my own heart. The invitations went out. A casual dinner, nothing formal, 2 weeks from Saturday. The responses came back quickly. Yes, they'd be delighted. What could they bring? How lovely that I was settling in. Standing in Mom's kitchen, my kitchen, planning a menu, I felt her presence more strongly than I had in months. Not as a ghost or a memory, but as a continuation, a thread connecting past to present to future. "I think I'm finally ready, Mom," I whispered to the empty room that didn't feel empty at all, to stand in my own light. The evening of my housewarming party arrived with perfect spring weather, mild temperatures, a gentle breeze, the garden coming into its first flush of beauty. I'd spent the day cooking, using recipes from Mom's notebook. Hooray. Famous deviled eggs, miniature quiches, lemon bars, and the apple pie that had always been her signature. The house gleamed, freshly polished and arranged, vases of daffodils from the garden brightening every room. I'd hung new curtains in the living room, a print with small violets that reminded me of Mom without trying to recreate her exact taste. The dining room table was expanded to its full length, set with Mom's good china, but my own table linens. A blend of past and present. Mrs. Patterson arrived first, bearing a potted peace lily. "For your new beginning," she explained, setting it on the hall table. The others followed in quick succession. Ruth, escorted by her grandson. Mr. and Mrs. Henley, my co-workers, friends old and new. Soon the house hummed with conversation and laughter, the rooms coming alive in a way they hadn't in years. I moved among my guests, refilling glasses, offering appetizers, accepting compliments on the renovations. In the kitchen, Ruth cornered me as I sliced more lemon bars. "You did good, Susan," she said, her eyes bright with approval. "This is exactly what I meant about bringing life back." "It feels right," I admitted, arranging the bars on a serving plate, like the house was waiting for this. "Not just the house." She patted my cheek with her papery hand. "Now, is there anything a nosy old woman can help with?" I laughed. "You could take these to the living room while I check on the pie." As the evening progressed, I found myself sharing stories about Mom, happy memories that felt healing to speak aloud. Others joined in, adding their own recollections. Mrs. Patterson describing Mom's determination to grow blue poppies despite the climate being all wrong. Mr. Henley recounting how she'd brought homemade soup to his office when he had pneumonia. The coffee shop owner remembering how she always requested extra whipped cream on her hot chocolate. "But don't tell my doctor." Each story felt like a gift, filling in corners of Mom's life I hadn't witnessed, expanding my understanding of who she had been in the world. As we gathered around the table for dessert, Mr. Henley raised his glass. "To Susan," he said, "for reminding us that homes are built of more than wood and stone. They're built of courage, memory, and love." "To Susan," the others echoed, lifting their glasses. I felt a blush warm my cheeks. "And to all of you for being part of this new chapter." After everyone had gone, I moved through the quiet house, collecting glasses, straightening cushions, savoring the lingering warmth of company. The peace lily Mrs. Patterson had brought glowed softly in the hallway light, its white blooms luminous against dark leaves. Outside, the garden lay silver in the moonlight. I stepped onto the porch, breathing in the sweet spring air, feeling strangely complete. Not finished. I knew enough now to understand that healing isn't a destination but a journey, but whole in a way I hadn't experienced in years. My phone chimed with a text, probably one of the guests thanking me for the evening. I pulled it from my pocket, then froze when I saw the name on the screen. Matthew. I hesitated, then opened the message. "Heard from Mrs. P that you had a housewarming tonight. The house always did love a good party. Hope it went well." Simple. Understated. No emotional manipulation. No grand gestures of repentance. Just an acknowledgement, perhaps, that life was continuing for us both. I stared at the screen, uncertain how to respond or whether to respond at all. After a moment, I typed, "It did." The sage green. "Kitchen would shock you." His reply came quickly. "Mom always said she wished she'd been braver with color." I smiled despite myself. That's exactly what Mrs. Patterson said. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally. "I'm doing better out here. Seeing someone, a therapist, I mean. Learning why I became someone I don't recognize. It's hard work." I sat on the porch swing, considering my response. "I'm glad," I wrote eventually. "For your sake. I don't expect forgiveness," came his reply. "Just wanted you to know I'm trying to find my way back. The brother you knew is still in here somewhere." The night air felt suddenly thick with possibility, not of instant reconciliation, but of a path that might, someday, lead there. "I believe that," I answered. "Good night, Matthew." I slipped the phone back into my pocket and leaned back on the swing, gazing up at the stars. The same stars Mom and I had named on summer evenings. The same stars that had witnessed our joy and grief, our losses and recoveries. The diamond necklace came to mind, still locked away in the safe deposit box. I knew now what I would do with it. Not sell it, as I'd once considered. Not wear it, as Regina had paraded it that Christmas Eve. Instead, I would have it remade, the stones reset into something new. A pendant, perhaps, with a setting that incorporated the sea glass Mom and I had collected on our last vacation. Something that honored both where I'd come from and where I was going. My inheritance, I realized, had never been about the house or the possessions. It had been about the quiet strength Mom had recognized in me long before I saw it in myself. The capacity to endure, to forgive, not out of weakness, but out of power. The ability to rebuild without erasing the past. I pushed the swing gently with my foot, setting it in motion. The creaking of the chains reminded me of childhood evenings, of Dad's voice calling us in for dinner, of Mom's laugh carrying across the yard. Some people inherit wealth, others inherit responsibility. But I inherited my mother's strength, and that was more valuable than diamonds. In the quiet darkness of a spring night, surrounded by the home that had witnessed both my deepest pain and newfound peace, I finally understood what Mom had tried to tell me all along, that the most precious inheritance isn't what's written in a will or locked in a safe deposit box. It's the courage to stand in your own light, the wisdom to honor what matters, the strength to begin again.